Like pixels on a screen, these are the games of our lives.
Okay, if you're hearing that, you know what that means. It's the Steam Summer Sale going on, and it's a hot time down here.
So many deals.
Man, there are hot deals everywhere. They're flashing me. It's ridiculous. There's a clicking bot game. But that voice you just heard, that is not Mike. Michael is on sabbatical on assignment. Joining me this week, it's Patrick. Say hello, Patrick.
Hello, Patrick.
Okay, good. Yes, 3 in a row. 3 people in a row have done that, so we've got a streak.
Sign of a good bit, right?
Yeah, no, the rule of 3s, and then when I get another guy, it'll be a 4th.
Is it good or hackneyed? I always confuse those two.
I think it's there's a fine line between good and hack. So, Patrick, what have you been up to? Have you been playing any video games?
So I have, but it's been with kind of a retro flair. I've been on a little nostalgia binge.
Okay, that's fine. We play old games all the time because we don't like paying full price.
Yeah, this was more just it's summertime, and that reminded me of I was not a huge console gamer growing up, but some of my more fond memories of summertime were playing on a little system called the Sega Master System.
Okay, that was Sega's version of the Nintendo. Entertainment.
I think it actually came out before the Nintendo, much like the Genesis, and then the hardware was much better on Nintendo's offering. But
okay, that makes sense.
It's funny. There are a couple of games on the Master System that I can like. Maybe it's just I only like a couple kinds of games, but I can track like modern things like Mass Effect and Deus Ex back to games like Miracle Warriors and Zillion on the Master System. It's like basically same kind of gameplay. I just really like it.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been diving deep into one of my favorite childhood games called Miracle Warriors, which is it's a fantasy RPG, very like Final Fantasy like. I'm actually not sure which came out first. But it's for its time, it had a lot more complexity than a lot of those kind of games. It had, instead of just you have a party with experience, some items, and money. You had all of those things, but also like fangs, which were a different kind of currency, and like this whole complex reputation economy. So
interesting.
Like
that's pretty advanced.
Yeah, it was, and it was really fun to sort of figure out all this stuff because we didn't have game facts or any of that stuff. And it was like they're basically you have to assemble this legendary party of you have to sort of awaken legendary heroes in people that you find. And each of these legendary heroes has, legendary armor that is scattered throughout the world. And many of these pieces of armor are hidden behind in caves behind these like super, super difficult, legendary like boss creatures. So those are fights that are, interesting from the game. But the thing is the people of the world like revere these creatures. And so you kill them to get the armor you need. You take this massive reputation hit because everybody, it's like if you killed the last unicorn on Earth.
Now, do you have to kill the monsters? Can you get through the game without getting the legendary armors and stuff?
Some of them I think you could leave alive. Because but not you could. I don't think you could do it with all. Like, there's just not enough armor in the game. To allow you to be able to beat the last chunk of the game without, being like, even if you had maxed out level and you had the best next best armor. But it's piece by piece. So you could probably like, skip a breastplate here. And if you got lucky, maybe complete the game. And that's actually part of the interesting part of the game is, one of the ways they, I guess, account for that in a game design way is like there are towns that sell magical items that you can use, but they only will talk to you if you have a certain level of reputation. So, in exchange for you not killing the majestic creature, which gives you armor that would help you, you may end up getting these magical items. I ended up doing both. It's possible to do both.
So the way you play it is just a bridge burning simulator.
No. I I carefully figure out exactly how to manipulate public opinion because each town has like a guy who doesn't explain why. He's just like, the town would like a donation. But basically it comes down to converting money into reputation. So you can sort of buy your hearts and minds back after killing, the giant legendary sea snake or whatever.
That sounds like a metaphor for something.
Yeah, it was a game ahead of its time.
Well, for my part, I made a big mistake, and I purchased Monster Hunter 4 for the 3-dimensional S last weekend, and I think I have a problem.
Now, had you played Monster Hunters 1 through 3?
No. Nope. I wasn't even interested in them until the last couple of months or so, mostly because this past year I'd really gotten into Dark Souls, and I'd heard a lot of people talking about how Monster Hunter and Dark Souls are very similar games, and I put in 30 hours and it hasn't been a week yet.
Yeah, so I'm chalking a lot of this up to masochism based on what I'm hearing so far.
Yeah. Monster Hunters, have you played a Monster Hunter?
No, but I've read on the internets.
Yeah, it is a very repetitive game. The basic loop is eat some food, get some buffs, go out into these predefined areas, hunt big monsters, kill them, skin them, hope you get enough materials to craft armor based on them, which improves you, and then do it again and again and again and again and again.
Well,
and again and again and again.
I mean, you got to give them credit for the title being appropriate then.
Yeah. There's just an infinite supply. I've hunted the same monster 27 times trying to get a particular material that I've never been able to get. Yeah. So the game is not. There is a lot of Dark Souls in the game because the hitboxes for the enemies are incredibly well detailed and defined. There are pixel perfect like weak zones that if you hit them at the right time and the right moment, you'll do a bunch of damage, maybe stun them or knock them over. There's a bunch of different weapon systems. There's incredibly unique weapons. You could fight with a giant Ricola horn. I'm using a sword and shield that I can stick the sword into the shield and it becomes a giant axe that when I hit people with it, they explode.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, like the game is rad. I wish it were on like a high definition system though, because playing it on a 3DS is not the most optimal way to play. And I still have like an original 3DS, so it's even smaller than most people.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's amazing to me when I see the regular 3DS how quickly I adjusted to the XL.
Yeah, and the new 3DS has a little nubbin that you can use as camera control. So it's an action game. So it's a third-person action game where you're running around in the world shooting stuff, and the camera is not fixed. So the way that they get around that is on the touch screen. There's a little D-pad that you control the camera with. But there's also a button to lock on to big monsters only. And when it does that, when you hit that button, it snaps over to them, but it doesn't snap to them. So you're basically wrestling with the camera and the weird weapon controls, and there's like momentum and weight, and you have to manage the sharpness of your weapon because if it gets too dull, you can't do any damage to the monsters. It is a gameplay loop that they have been refining for years and gotten to the point where it's so honed that if you're a new player getting into it, you will be hooked, and you won't have noticed how similar it is to the last several games.
That was another thing about Miracle Warriors that was surprisingly kind of ahead of its time. Is your weapons and armor had durability, and it would go down over time. And you had to go back to town and repair. Unless, and they had kind of brute force solutions to a lot of these things, which was basically, that was like a huge pain because you'd be like in real deep trouble if your stuff was broken and then you were far away from a town. Plus it cost money. But if you basically just spent one giant lump sum in this one town, you essentially bought an indentured servant that was a blacksmith that just followed you everywhere.
Oh, like a repair bot.
basically. And like he only showed up on like the pause screen where you had, it was like a stat sheet of all your characters and stuff, and it showed, you know, items you'd collected and the quantity of various things. And there was just this dude with a hammer in the corner that, you know, treated like an inventory item.
Yeah. So the game's got a lot of style. It's held together by a paper thin plot that is kind of engaging. But yeah, as a first time Monster Hunter player, I'm totally hooked, and they're doing a new one soon, or in the next couple of years. And I think it's going to be on an actual like HD system, so I'm looking forward to that.
Who
definitely
is that like a Nintendo original, or who actually makes it?
It is Capcom. It's pretty much the only game they make now. that isn't a re-release of a game they previously made. But it actually is pretty much just a re-release of games they previously made, so yeah, it's Capcom. But for anything you're looking maybe to pick up that's on your wish list for Steam that you might want to grab?
Yeah, so weirdly enough, I pledged to myself that I would eventually buy and play Duke Nukem if they released it. And I feel like it's about time that I, you know, make good on that. So I'll probably grab that, because I can't imagine they're, you know, at some point they'll have it on sale for cheap enough that I'll be like, all right, fine.
Duke Nukem Forever?
Forever, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's got to be what, 99 cents now? Let's see. $6.59 right now on Steam.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'll do that, you know. And it really is. I played the demo on the 360, and I realized that, you know, this is the kind of game I want to play on the PC. But I seriously, you know, throughout the whole development debacle of that, I was like, no, man, if they can actually get this product on a shelf, I will buy it purely out of, you know, commending their stick-to-itiveness, you know?
You want to close the loop on Duke Nukem.
Yeah, and I mean, because I spent a lot of hours on Duke Nukem 3D, mainly, you know, building my own levels and the multiplayer.
Interesting. That is not an opinion that I've ever heard about Duke Nukem Forever now that it's been out for so long. I mean, definitely when it came out, people were excited, but then they played it.
Yeah, I will admit it's a sort of morbid curiosity. But, you know.
I mean, for $7, you can scratch that itch.
Exactly.
All right. Well, for me, Elite Dangerous recently released probably their biggest update to the game thus far. They called it Power Play. Whereas up until this point, a lot of the quote unquote narrative of the game was you know, made up in your own head. You sort of got these missions from faceless, personless computer screens that told you to go somewhere and do something. Well, now they've sort of rolled that quest system into this sort of galactic reputation network that has, you know, actual people with faces and pictures associated with it. So apart from that, they've made a couple of questing changes, and the way that trading works is a little different now. So it's a big enough change of the game that I'm probably going to get back into it. I haven't played for a while, mostly because I had gotten to the point where it was a big grind, just, you know, doing trading runs, going back and forth. So now that there's this massive sort of in-depth reputation system that's been added to the game that sort of gives players more direction, I'm interested in checking that out. So I'm definitely going to try that out.
So they've put a human face on successfully parking in a spaceport.
Yeah. Whereas previously your only glimpse of humanity was looking down and seeing your character's hands and feet. There are now actual portraits of people in the game. And it's a space parking simulator, as we discussed on other things.
I would love to see the software development scrum board where they're like, they've chunked out all the work and they're like, yeah, let's make sure all this stuff works. We'll inject some indication that you are a human creature and there are others like you in this universe. That's sprint 10.
All right, so there's a couple of things on the news front. Today, Friday, when we're recording this, YouTube has launched its gaming suite app thing that is intended to sort of compete with Twitch and sort of take Let's Plays and gameplay footage and game stuff and sort of focus it all into one area of YouTube that will have its own separate app, essentially.
So they've created a portal that reflects the 80% of what is on their site.
Yeah, I mean, well, Google tried to buy or Google was in talks to buy Twitch, and I guess they didn't because they had this in the wings. So
yeah, I'm the first to say that, you know, with something like YouTube or Kickstarter, like there's no scarcity, right? Everything's on there, so there's no complaining about, oh, why are there so many of this things? Because like there's room for everybody. But like it does astound me in the last couple of years, you go to YouTube and the just page, the videos on the front page, what used to be there was such a wide variety, and now it's like there's so much of that, Let's Play and just video game kibitzing content.
Well, I mean, this is kind of like a circle jerk because we're doing that right now, but I had heard a lot of talk about it that happened mostly because of the way that YouTube has changed the way that its search algorithms work, in going from number of views to sort of a minutes watched algorithm. And gameplay footage is so easy to capture, especially from PC, that it's really easy to record an hour of footage, break it up into 1 or 2 episodes, slap it on there, and it's very little quote unquote relative work to actually doing something more creative, which is probably going to end up being shorter in the long run. And while it may have more views, it's not going to come up more often in search results just because it is shorter.
It's I think you hit the nail on the head, though. I mean, for every 2 minutes of solid gold that like Mike Diva puts out there, just the sheer he's a unique talent. The number of people who can do, hey, I'm going to do this stuff in Minecraft, or here's how you build something in Minecraft, or here's, the first couple levels of this particular game. That's a ton more people. And so, of course, they're going to be generating content at a much greater rate.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see where that goes. Their big selling point right now, other than the fact that they've got Google money behind it, is 60 frames per second on live streams and stuff. So I'd be interested to see where they take that live streaming stuff. If they still have to do the Twitch thing with the weird delay, or if they can sort of bring that down to more real time stuff. I'd be interested to check that out because going to Twitch is kind of a pain. You really have to do some work to set it up. So maybe going to YouTube will be easier. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're going to have an advantage with discoverability and stuff like that, where, you watch a video about a game, they can, it's going to be on YouTube because Twitch doesn't have that service. But then next to that video, YouTube can go, hey, check out these live streams that are playing this game. They have that cross promotional capability.
Yep. And it's already, it'll be integrated with all of Google's stuff. So it'll be super easy.
I am curious though, I would say one of the areas that Twitch still needs to improve is its sort of community management. And obviously, YouTube is well known throughout the internet for having like one of the most abusive and horrible communities. So, I mean, does Google really think they can crack that nut?
Yeah, that's a weird thing because the first thing I do whenever I go watch a Twitch stream is hide the chat.
Wise man.
Because I don't really care what other people have to say. I care about what's going on the screen, I don't necessarily need to interact with that person unless there's few enough people watching that it is actually meaningful. YouTube already has a bunch of live streaming stuff with Google Hangouts and just doing live events. But they don't really promote that stuff. So now that they've got a place for it that is all gaming focused, be interesting to see what they're doing with it. I mean, they just announced it today, so they're still rolling out details. So probably maybe have more information on that later. But yeah, weird timing going into E3. I guess that's where they're doing all their E3 coverage stuff is going to be in that space. So
And
we'll see.
I wonder if they'll use this to, continue to sort of create burrows of YouTube. That's like, here's the movies YouTube, and here's the, I don't know, music.
So, the other big news thing earlier this, I think it was just yesterday, Oculus had their big press conference where they came out of development essentially and said, hey, we're actually going to sell this thing for non-developers. But yeah, they showed off the final hardware. It looks pretty sleek, and it looks fairly compact. A lot more compact than I was expecting. I was expecting to have this, the way that Steam, or rather Valve, is doing their Vive stuff, where you've got a couple of base stations, but it's only one base station. It looks like a desktop unit, so it's got integrated headphones and.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have done a lot to target people like me who are gonna need more than halfway to be interested in this stuff.
Right.
I'm a little unsure about the little like Spider-Man gauntlets that they've got for gesture detection.
It's basically like if you took an Xbox controller, snapped off the two side bits, and then did a circle round in plastic. And I actually think that's a pretty smart way of doing it, because everybody's used to that sort of holding a controller like that. Now they're not attached to one another and they're wireless, so you've got sort of free range of motion. It's kind of like the Sony Move controller, but a little more compact.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have practical questions about, how does it are there two separate batteries you have to charge, and how long does the charge last, stuff like that. And then I don't know, I feel a little I guess to a certain extent when you're doing VR, you are strapped in, so you have to deal with the fact that you have wrist restraints, and you've blinded yourself to the world around you, and that's probably just something I need to deal with.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be a weird thing. Have you ever put on an Oculus?
No, it's on the list whenever I go back to Atlanta. Ray has I think it's a dungeon actually set up specifically for this.
You've been there. You've been to the Servo dungeon.
Oh, I've been there many, many times, but I mean he has a sub dungeon in the Servo dungeon that is simply this is Patrick's VR experience dungeon. The
virtual chamber, if you will.
Yeah, because I think he has a separate I don't know what you'd call it, program of entertainment. Then whenever people go over, he's like, "Hey, you should check this thing out," because he's a big fan. And they get, I think, like the penny tour, and I think he wants to take me into his deep cuts, like
the deepest, darkest pits of tentacle porn.
His like secret VR mixtape, if you will.
I mean, the Oculus website, which I went to today, basically says, we can't really, not in as many words, but it says it is really tough to sort of show this stuff off in pictures. You kind of have to try it, which indicates to me that they're going to do a big marketing push with like demo stations in Best Buys probably in the future, which is probably necessary, because I can't imagine like describing a VR experience to somebody who has never done it and actually making them want to buy it without trying it first.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got a tough road there, because the same thing I was talking about, my mind immediately goes to practical problems, like how are people going to react to chaining both of their hands into devices that they can't easily just like drop when the pizza guy gets here, or how are people going to react to having to calibrate the distance and the lenses around their individual vision. And on top of that, with glasses, I know they talked about it's compatible with all these things. They've clearly put some thought into them. But in what you're talking about, like in Best Buy, you'd have to have a full-time employee standing there to calibrate the device for each person that wanted to try it.
And wipe it down afterwards.
And exactly. If you've ever been to a Best Buy and found that like the Xbox controller was busted, that is a hell of a lot more robust and bulletproof of a device than an Oculus headset.
There wasn't a lot of software that they showed off. I mean, Eve Valkyrie has sort of been in the mix for a while. They showed off a couple of movies, I think. I didn't actually watch it, so I don't know what they showed off in all, but they had this weird like game streaming thing where you could hook it up to your Xbox and be in a virtual room projecting the Xbox game on a far wall, which sort of defeats the purpose.
I'm going to put myself in the Matrix.
Yeah, like, do you really need that much sensory deprivation to play your video games?
I mean, I'm hoping that they basically use that as a tech proof of concept to then begin delivering VR experiences through the Xbox, which is probably ideal for me. Like, if I could basically get the top 40% of the VR cool stuff that's out there through something as simple as a game console, then that's where I'm at. We'll see. I mean, the things that interest me. I mean, VR is a weird thing because a lot of people look at it for games, and for me, as a mainly creative person, like, there's so much cool stuff you could do with that. Like, you see that scene in Iron Man where like Tony Stark is manipulating 3D models just in the air, and obviously he's doing it with a hologram, but you could do that much easier in a VR display system. That kind of stuff is what would get me to run camp out for something like this. Like,
yeah, I'd be hella down to sort of just explore like a place like Skyrim or Morrowind. Just walk around, don't play the game, just walk around in that area. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. Well, that was what another friend of mine was telling me about. He got an Oculus dev kit, and he was like, wait, I can't remember who it was actually, but he was basically saying he went into Skyrim and spent an hour picking up a book and throwing it across the room. And that's all he did over and over and over, because that experience was so incredibly immersive that he just kept trying to sort of break it, where he could find something where it the seams were showing or it didn't feel real. And it cracked me up. Like, he spent a lot of time doing that, and that's a pretty old engine at this point.
And it's janky as fuck.
Yeah, it's a Bethesda product. I mean, good God. That's something that also I hope that Oculus has learned from the Ouya debacle. Of I know they announced like a store, but it seems like right now what has kept the Oculus enthusiast happy is like all these weird little pet projects that are exactly what you're talking about, like explore this shipwreck that just some dude put together. It's not like a large software company. It's just some enthusiast.
Yeah. Or that,
if
they VR arcade.
Yeah, like that. Oh my God, that's so amazing. They need to make that stuff easily accessible through their store, or they're going to have that Ouya problem, and it's going to be really bad.
Definitely. And Ouya also launched without the software to back it up, other than Towerfall, I guess. But Towerfall eventually came to everything else, so unless you were really into Towerfall for the first 6 months, there's no reason to buy an Ouya. I mean, there's definitely potential in an Oculus VR future. I'm certainly interested to try it. The only Oculus experience I've had was sort of like a tech demo-y thing where I sat in a race car and they drove me around a track, but it was still amazing.
Which was that, Crystal Cove or?
I can't. It was definitely no. It was an early version of DevKit 2 where it had the 1080p, but it was not great looking. So, Patrick, where can people find you on the Intertrons?
I talk a lot on a website called Twitter. It's a social network where you post these short messages. My username is Patrick Central.
Can I give likes and thumbs up?
Not exactly.
On this social media network?
It's a stars situation.
Like the TV network?
I think they do not use the Z.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm Patrick Central on Twitter. I have a website called patrickcentral.com that kind of encases all of the various other stuff that I do.
And an example of which would be the screen that you're looking at right now if you're watching it on YouTube, because Patrick designed my logo.
Branding.
Yes, this is the brand cast, because Patrick and I do a lot of stuff together. So this is Cross Promotion Central.
We are synergizing the shit out of this.
Why don't we talk a lot about the other stuff that we do together? Go ahead.
Well, I just have been editing a podcast that we do together. That's not this podcast. It's a different podcast called Worst Thing Ever that I normally edit all of the video game content out of because, you know, people like you are doing a much better job of those discussions on shows like this.
I wouldn't go that far.
But yeah, that's you know, Chris and I, a bunch of other folks, kind of a rotating cast do a podcast called Worst Thing Ever, and it has a spinoff called Cinemanauts that's actually a group viewing of terrible movies that we sort of mock, and periodically I'll sync up the audio for those and put up a little clip show on YouTube so that people can kind of spend 15 minutes to get a taste for some, you know, horrible piece of cinema from the 80s.
90s or even 2014.
The worst hits of the 80s, 90s, and
yeah, that's great. There will be links to all of that in the description and at the end of this video. If you listened to last week's episode, you heard that I was doing a challenge to sort of give away a copy of the game Nuclear Throne. As at the time of this recording, a friend of the show, Ray Bad Servo Ray, was the only entrant. So, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm not giving it to anybody. Maybe if you're good, we'll do something at episode 20. But this has been episode 10 of the Games of Our Lives. Thank you for listening. For Patrick, I've been Chris. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to see more videos. If you like the videos, please share them with your friends. If you got feedback for me, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. You could follow me on Twitter at fractruck_games for the latest updates and notifications when new videos go up. And thus, dear viewer, I bid you adieu. Good night. Yeah, I think I'm having heat madness.
I've been getting a little bit of that lately.
So in the summertime, for $10
in the city,
yeah, well, it's hot time, summer in the city.
How's the back of your neck?
Sweaty and prickly. That's not the lyrics.
That's not even close.